Okay, we're going to look at how we solve quadratic equations. And so first we're going to review how we solve linear equations. So we solve linear equations by isolating the variable. Let me just charge my pen real quick. Okay, so we solve them by isolating the variable. Get x by itself. So in this case, x appears on both sides, so we're going to subtract 2x from both sides and write our new equation. D is equal 0, right? Then I'm going to subtract 4 off both sides and write our new equivalent equation. So that is our solution. We got x by itself on one side of the equal sign and all the numbers on the other side. And that is how we isolate the variable for linear equations. All right, let's look at another example. Again, it's linear because x is to the power of 1. So the way we solve is we isolate the variable. So in this case, I'm going to divide both sides of the equation by 2. So those 2's cancel over there, and I have x minus 1 equals 6. Then I can add 1 to both sides. We have now isolated the variable when these equal 0. X is by itself on one side of the equal sign. On the other side, I get 7. So quadratic function, we want to talk about the standard form of a quadratic function. It can be ax squared plus bx plus c. How is it different from a linear? It's got an x squared term. Okay, so there's different ways to solve these. There is one special case we want to discuss first when b is 0. So notice this is like x squared plus 0x minus 25. Notice there's the missing middle term. We don't show it when it's 0x. So when it's just x squared in the number, the way we solve is to isolate the variable. So we can still do this like we do linear equations. I'm going to add 25 to both sides. I get x squared equals 25. Now here's the new step. Because we have x squared equals, we want to square root both sides to get our solution. So the square root of x squared is just x. Because the square root means what times itself is x squared. Well, it's x times x is x squared. So when you square root a square, those two things undo each other. Actually, I'll write it like this. Square root of x and x squared are inverses, so they undo each other. I should say are inverse operations, so they undo each other. All right, so then the square root of 25 is plus and minus 5. So there's actually two answers, 5 and negative 5. Because when we square root 25, we have 5 times 5 is 25, but also negative 5 times negative 5 is 25. So now we're just going to repeat this process. If I add 49 to both sides, I get x squared equals 49. Then on this next step, I'm going to square root to get the x squared turned into an x. The square root of 49 is 7 and negative 7. All right, so here we want to isolate the x squared and then square root at the final step. So we're going to add 18 to both sides of the equation. So now I have 2x squared equals 18. Then I can divide both sides by 2 to isolate the x squared. Those cancel. 18 divided by 2 is 9. And now I can do the final step of square rooting both sides. All right, let's look at, oh, I skipped over 3. We can add 20 to both sides. We get x squared equals 20. And now when I square root, we run into a little bit of a problem here. The square root of 20 is not a perfect square. So we have the square root of 20 and we have the negative square root of 20. We know that it's in between, it's a decimal in between 4. Square root of 20 is in between 4 and 5. You can use your calculator to get the decimal. All right, here's a little note. You can leave this as the exact answer, or you can use your calculator to get the decimal. I'm just going to leave that as the exact answer. So when I isolate the variable, I divide both sides here by 2, I get x squared equals 16. So if I square root both sides, I get x equals 4 and negative 4. Don't forget both versions. Here I'm going to subtract 11. Get x squared equals 9. So then I square root both sides. I get x equals negative 9 and 9. Two answers, notice, most of the time. All right, here I subtract 200 on both sides. So I end up with that. I should probably show you that, sorry. These cancel. 0 minus 200 is negative 200. Now I want to divide by negative 2 on both sides. So I get x squared equals 100. And then I want to square root finally once I get the x squared isolated. X equals negative 100 and positive 100. X squared equals 0 is already isolated, so I want to square root both sides. I get x equals 0. There's no plus or minus. There's only one answer in this case. Right? 0 doesn't have a positive or a negative. So this is a weird case. We only get one answer. All the other times we got two answers. Here I'm going to subtract 10 off both sides. We get x squared equals negative 10. I square root both sides. We get x equals no solutions. There is no number times itself that gives me a negative number. Right? Whatever you want to say here, it's not going to work out, because if I say a negative number, it's going to be a negative times a negative is a positive. 10's a little weird because it's not a perfect square. Let's say we were trying to solve x squared equals negative 49. If you square root both sides, you get x equals, it's no solutions. But if you wanted to say that it was like, say, 7 or negative 7, let's just start with 7. 7's not a solution because 7 times 7 is 49, not negative 49. And negative 7 is not a solution because negative 7 times negative 7 is 49. Again, not negative 40. Negative 7 times negative 7 is positive 49, which is, again, not negative 49. All right, so that's how we're going to solve these. How many solutions are possible for a quadratic function? Most of the time, there are two solutions. Sometimes there is one solution or no solutions. This practice, we're going to leave that for classwork next time. So your homework is to just get through these notes. Thank you.